That little thing that you just picked up at the supermarket, yep, I know how that's made, and I can trace the entire supply line for that thing. At some point, there's always going to be some trade-off. You're still going to need to buy things that might not be the best for the earth. But are you at least aware of that trade-off? And you're making a conscious decision now to go and take that action.
So we have Willson here from Arcstone. And one of our conversations, you so wonderfully professed your nerddom for manufacturing. Just I've never seen anyone geek out about manufacturing so much.
Probably should have reined it back a little bit.
It was pretty full on. It was great. And I'm curious if you could look back into your childhood at all, or growing up, where any of those patterns you were noticing, or as a kid, really were prominent that would have led you to this path today.
I think I'd have to put a lot on it. It goes back to luck again. I know you've been hearing this quite a bit, and sometimes things just fall the way they fall. So for myself, I've always had a passion about logic and math. So some of you might be keen to hear that I thought and I really wanted to be a trader for the longest time. Because it was logical to a certain degree. You could quantify risk to a certain degree and then make the right decisions and then move the funds where you need to move the funds. So when I first went in to undergrad, I actually planned to go into that path. So I took a bunch of business courses. My very first internship was with Russell Investments. I worked with a fantastic department in the Capital Markets Research Department. Those were the guys that built out all the indices there, which was awesome. I learned a lot of the tool sets about optimization, about how do you formulate a lot of the risks, how do you start putting things together that's really abstract, really large, and being able to kind of find some understanding around it. But at the same time, that was also when I took a course in something that was a seminar, so industrial engineering. Just a random thing that I was taking. And I just needed to fill a slot, actually, believe it or not. I had a friend that was from my same high school that went in and said, he's taking that course, so why don't you take this course as well? And that was my first time I got introduced into manufacturing. And industrial engineering was kind of designed back in the mid-40s, right around when the war was happening, just to figure out how do we get things to the front lines faster? What's the best way to transport things? It has that same kind of rigor and kind of drive in terms of how do we optimize. And I looked at it, and I looked at my internship, and I said, well, I went through a fantastic internship, but what have I really done? And no offense to all you guys here. And it's I just spent the entire summer trying to figure out how to move money from one place to the other. And I really haven't done anything much here. And what I learned as I got deeper into the manufacturing side was that this stuff is awesome. I could literally see something and go into a factory where before there was piles of goo that turns out to be your shampoo later on. Or piles of goo, what ends up being your gourmet chocolates that you end up buying later on. And that was where all that math and all that logic that I was trying to kind of figure out where to put it into fell into the manufacturing side. And from then on, I never left. The whole thing has always been in manufacturing. So this, I guess, is where all the geekiness is coming from. It's my biggest passion is to be able to walk into a brand new manufacturing floor and see everything from beginning to end, find out what the issues are. And what's even better now is I can go in and say, you know what, I can help you do that better. And I can now go and walk through a store, and walk through a shop, or walk outside and say, yep, that shirt you're wearing probably has some solution set from Arcstone that's running it. Or that little thing that you just picked up at the supermarket, yep, I know how that's made, and I can trace the entire supply line for that thing. And that's the joy and the passion that I get from actually starting up Arcstone. I think a lot of people, when they look at starting a company, the first thing they try to look at is, can I make a lot of money very fast? And from a statistical standpoint, that ain't gonna happen for you. So the way I looked at it, from the reasons why I actually dropped out of my PhD to start Arcstone, was one, I happened to be, lucky enough to fall into a situation where someone decided to give me a check. And the second one is really that I looked at it from the standpoint of, what's there to lose? I'm working in the field that I love. I get to do something that I enjoy. Sure, about 80% of it now is really kind of mundane that I got to take care of, but I get to wake up knowing that in a few days I'm walking into a new factory. And so, God forbid if it fails, what exactly was the loss that I would have? There was none. So when I look at it from that standpoint, Arcstone was a no-brainer. The idea was there, the solution was there. There's a way for me to help manufacturers and figure out my passion and continue my passion. But at the same time, there's so much that could be gained, right? As I talked before about, if I just could see what was happening on the production floor, I could improve so many things. We still all need products. You're still going to go out and buy stuff. You're still going to go do those things. But if we can do it at a better rate, with a higher quality, with less waste, we all gain in the long run. That was a really long answer, too.
No, it's perfect. I mean, what an amazing gift to stumble upon so early in your studies and to see your life's path ahead of you in some ways. It's pretty cool.
So if I always say, like, if I end up like dying somewhere, I'll probably die in a factory because I had an accident in there. But like that's where I want to spend my time, right? And it's like it's awesome. Like I get to see things literally being made in front of my eyes.
It's cool. Just pre-launching Arcstone, was there like a spark or a moment of inspiration where you saw an opportunity that something needed to be fixed and there was no turning back? Like, what was that moment like?
Because I started geeking out about manufacturing pretty early. Has anyone actually watched something on the Discovery Channel if you're in the States, or something called How It's Made?
Yeah.
If you haven't, like, go just Google How It's Made. There's like, I don't know, 20 seasons of everything that you can imagine being filmed. I love that. Like, that's what I have on all the time. But, sorry, I know I'm going too far here.
No, please.
But that's, when you look at that, when you kind of look at so many different manufacturing facilities, and I've had the chance, even before I began my kind of professional life, I got to go through a lot of manufacturers. And it's not just in one type. So I went from gourmet chocolates to glass bottle manufacturing to wineries to aircraft and aerospace. And it wasn't a matter of something where it just like popped into my mind. It was just, wait, you have a problem, you have a problem, you have a problem, and you have a problem. But it's all the same problem, even though you guys all make completely different things, right? So all these issues really is around visibility. So we've been through industrial engineering, we've been through all the math and the statistics. It's really, if you had the data, if you would provide the data set, anyone could optimize for it. I mean, that's easy to solve once you can see everything. But the problem is you couldn't see everything. Either information was missing, someone forgot to key it in, you can't get the machine data out, and then can I deploy a sensor now? Which has become kind of the big switch in this whole Industry 4.0 thing, where there's cheap enough sensors that I can just, you know what, I don't need you to fill anything in, I'll just throw a sensor in and then I can know what's going on. And that was kind of like the thing where, there's a need for it. Why hasn't anyone figured this out? Because everything else we can solve as long as we can see it. So that was kind of like molded in my mind for quite a while. It was more so of not the idea popped up, it was more so the opportunity to launch it finally popped up. So I was in the middle of my PhD, and I was doing it at INSEAD in France, and I had the opportunity to come to Singapore for 2 months. And in Singapore, I ended up talking about what I plan to do in 5 years' time, because that's how long it takes you to go through your PhD. And that's a long time. I love to teach, so I think based on how much you hear me talking already, you kind of figure that I like to talk about stuff I like. But it's also something where I knew that, to do something like Arcstone, I probably needed some additional credibility. So that's what I was thinking in my mind. So I'll go through the PhD, do 5 years, and get permanent head damage. That's PhD. And then come out and start Arcstone. That was the intention. But when I was in Singapore, I ended up talking about Arcstone's concepts. It said, I really want to solve this while I'm relaxing, hopefully on the tenure track somewhere, and start Arcstone on the side. And what ended up happening was when I was about to leave, I got the opportunity where the guy stopped me and said, here's a check. You start Arcstone now, or you don't start it at all. Because in 5 years' time, there will be nothing left for you. Like, the industry would have moved on, somebody would have stepped in, so you do it now. So I told him, like, okay, this is obviously a very big decision. I need to get back to France so I can kind of drown myself in wine and cheese, and then I will give you a decision in a little bit. So I went back and I thought, okay, I've had the idea, so it wasn't like a spark of an idea, but like it's something I wanted to do for a long time. And suddenly there's this opportunity, which is where the luck part comes in again. Where if I take it now, I can try something, do something I love, and maybe it'll be successful. Or I stay in my PhD, and when I finish, there might not be anything left for me to actually try. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. Right? So then I said, if INSEAD never accepts me back again, even if Arcstone fails, then there's probably more PhD programs outside that I can look into. So I said, you know what the hell? So I left. So the funny unofficial date of Arcstone is on April Fool's Day of 2013. I packed up and left France, came to Singapore. I knew like 2 people on the campus at the time, and that was how Arcstone started. And had I stayed in my PhD program, you wouldn't see me now because I would be graduating trying to get tenure somewhere right now. And that was 5 years ago.
We're much happier that you're here.
Me too. Me too. Thank you.
Just this has like such a massive potential impact, and I'm curious to hear you describe like what's the domino effect when we have visibility in manufacturing. What happens to the world and the way that we interact with it?
Absolutely. I think when you look at a lot of products that people buy, it's so difficult to understand how your product was made. Most people, again, like I said before, no one wants to know how the sausage was made. But that's actually the problem. It's because you don't know, so you don't know what you buy, and you end up being the problem. Right? Manufacturers operate in a very clear-cut methodology. They have 2 main conditions that they need to follow. One is, how do I make my products cheaper so my margins are higher? My second one is, how do I make sure that it's at the bare minimum quality that you will accept? Everything else, unfortunately to them, is secondary. So when it comes to how they take care of the environment, when it comes to social responsibility, that unfortunately falls to the wayside. Right? So unless there's governmental rules to enforce it, they're probably going to take the easier route. Right? And that's just how, unfortunately, it works. But now imagine if you had visibility into this process. If you knew where their materials were being sourced from. Were they sourced sustainably? When they manufactured the process, how good was the actual output? And are they scrapping half of it because half of it is garbage? But because they can get it to you at a cheaper price, they will throw away half of the product, even though that's going to go straight into a landfill or wherever it's going to be. Are they running their processes efficiently, which means that they're not keeping machines on overnight for no reason that's not running anything and it's sucking electricity? And believe it or not, that happens quite a bit. All these things, there's no rating for a manufacturer if they're doing well. There's a rating supposedly for a brand level that might be doing well, but then you're missing the problem. You're not actually seeing what's going on. So what we look at when Arcstone looks at the concept of sustainability, it is a positive outcome from visibility. If I could just see everything, not only am I helping the manufacturer improve on those 2 conditions, it ensures that the brand levels that are buying those products are actually buying responsibly. And for consumers, if you also had access to that entire chain, you'll know what you're actually doing when you go into a store and pick up something and buy it and know that you didn't do anything horrible, right? At some point, there's always going to be some trade-off. You're still going to need to buy things that might not be the best for the earth. But are you at least aware of that trade-off? And you're making a conscious decision now to go and take that action. Right? So that's where we see the true concept of a really visible manufacturing supply chain being established.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to see that world
I hope
become
so
a reality.
too. It'll take time, but
Yeah.
give us time.
Well, your passion is going to fuel you in the long run to make that happen. There's no question.
That or I just put everyone to sleep about manufacturing.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Willson.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.